How to interview for junior SEO roles with Dan Taylor. The In Search SEO Podcast is brought to you by Similarweb, helping you build better SEO strategies with digital intelligence, insights, and data. Hey, it's David. What is the best way to go about interviewing for junior SEO roles? That's what we're discussing today with a man who's been named as one of the top SEOs by Search Engine Journal, as well as one of the top 20 technical SEOs to follow by OnCrawl. He's a speaker, a writer, and a knowledge sharer, and the partner and head of technical SEO at Salt Agency. A warm welcome to the In Search SEO Podcast, Dan Taylor.
Hi David, hi everyone, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Well, you can find Dan over at salt.agency. So Dan, today we're discussing how to interview for junior SEO roles. But before we get to that, how do you actually find good people to interview?
So that is quite the tricky element because, typically when you're hiring a more senior role, SEO tends to have a few haunts, if you like, digitally and in person, where you can go to find talent. It was SEO specific job boards, etc. But when you're looking for that new person to the industry, the best thing that I personally found when I used to run and I developed the training program at Salt was actually building relationships within the local area with colleges and universities. And fortunately, our office is quite close to the university I'm an alumni of. So I built a good relationship with them. And through kind of understanding a university's career placement team, for example, and what their objectives are, you can work with them to actually have them pass candidates to you who they think might be a better fit, because their objective is they want to get people in successful placements and then boast about how great the career placement your department is, etc. And obviously your objective is to get people who will be that best fit. Local colleges, local universities, building those relationships and looking locally as well, because I think even though postcode remote working is a lot greater, just focusing on your doorstep first is often quite a big underutilized pool of talent, especially for early career SEOs.
Are there certain degrees that tend to result in becoming a good SEO?
On paper, I'd want to say yes. However, we have a senior executive at Salt who has been with us a number of years now, who came through my training program, who did graphic design as a degree. We've also had people who, being honest, we've got people who we've trained up who don't have degrees and came with us straight out of college. I'd say at that stage, and from going through education system myself, I think you're looking for more of a personality type and the aptitude of individuals versus the actual degrees they've done. I think you do need a degree which has potentially got more analytical sides to it. So with graphic design, there is a lot of data management and file management and version control, and there's also understanding, interpreting project briefs and moving that along, and the applications of what your actual end will be, versus, and not want to discredit it, but something more like a fine art degree might not carry those same analytical skills inherent as part of that theory and part of that education system. But then obviously your business degrees, marketing degrees, economics lend themselves to that much more closely, as well as things like psychology, which do a lot of theory. And it depends on also what side of SEO you intend people to specialize in, I guess. Strategy necessarily doesn't require the same technical knowledge and analytical and math skills, potentially as a foundation, versus what somebody who would want to be a technical or engineer would be.
You mentioned personality type there. What's likely to be a successful personality to have a good career in SEO? And also, how do you interview, I guess, to establish what someone's personality is likely to be?
So there's probably two sides to that. If we go down the psychology route and look at things like colour and Myers-Briggs tests, so that's for those who aren't aware of what Myers-Briggs are, it's where people are categorized like by red personality, blue personality, green or yellow, and all the shades in the middle. And there's actually a really good book I'd recommend called Surrounded by Idiots, which kind of covers the personality types in a good way. And it told me a lot about self-reflection, as because I'm technically classed as a red, which means I'm quite forefront full and hard to handle other times. But you essentially want to then assess how somebody is as a person. So greens and yellows are more qualitative. They want to focus more on words, feelings, and look around and understand the world differently to a blue or a red, who are typically more analytical, more kind of like be brief, be bright, be gone. So you want to assess that kind of personality type from an initial standpoint of your own company culture. Do you think they'll be a fit? What does that fit in your current personality types? Will they blend? Because whilst you are looking for somebody who can effectively do or learn SEO to a good standard, you also want to retain them, as they want to be happy in the workplace and they don't want to be disruptive to your workplace. The second side of that personality type kind of comes down to more those kind of soft skills like work aptitude. So even if someone's just been at university or a college, have they done extracurriculars? Have they done side projects? What have they done on work experience? What did they enjoy about those work experience things? And I remember interviewing people when we were doing our training programs whose only work experience had been in supermarkets, groceries, or in France in particular. And it's more kind of like, okay, so what are you getting out of it? And it's when they're coming back in, if someone's just answering, well, I just stack shelves, versus what they're actually then understanding about process as to why they're stacking the shelf, is that secondary level of thinking and aptitude behind it.
So looking at the book Surrounded by Idiots, the 4 types of human behavior and how to effectively communicate with each in business and in life, it reminds me of a book that was published probably about 20 years ago called Personality Plus. And that's a book that I read and learned a lot about how different personalities work. And this book, Surrounded by Idiots, talks about 4 types of human behavior. Now, the 4 types of personalities that Personality Plus talked about was sanguine, melancholy, choleric, and phlegmatic. And I'm not sure if that's the personalities that this book that you recommend is broken down to as well.
I'd say yes, but in a slightly less
traditional psychology way of thinking.
Yeah, very much lesser than traditional psychology. More a case of, I think I'd probably interpret Be Surrounded by Idiots more as a understanding your own personality trait better and being less friction, I guess, with other personality types, and how to check yourself a little bit more, I guess, in terms of also understanding why you might, the whole premise is sometimes you go away from conversation in life and think, wow, why am I surrounded by idiots and things like that? And it's kind of understanding, actually, they're not idiots. It's just a slightly different way of the world, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same kind of principle, and it's a wonderful gift to give yourself, to actually teach yourself that other people behave in a different way because that's the way that they think and operate. They're not trying to annoy you. It's just that that's the way they think. And if you can actually not get emotional about it and just think, well, that's the way that they think about it and they operate, and you don't judge them for that, but you need to understand that they think differently.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think when you're looking at personality types of someone who's joined the team who, it's an old adage of you're looking for certain skill sets. And when someone is looking at an entry-level SEO role, they might have done some basic SEO modules as part of a university degree. They might have read a few books on it. They might have looked online. They might have done one of the many SEO courses out there, but their actual practical application skills will be quite minimal. So you know they're not going to have that skill set. So you're then kind of looking at the other skill set that they have. Whereas with a more experienced hire, you kind of then almost do the mental mathematics of, well, they're really good at technical SEO. Can I live with them being an opposite personality type to the rest of the team? What is that payoff? But when you don't have that other skill set to bring in, it's 100% on that other kind of skill set.
So when you have a speculative CV land on your desk, what are you looking for to decide whether or not to bring them in for interview?
At CV stage, it's very hard. I think the main thing I've ever looked at when I've had, like, say, someone who's new to SEO come across the table, it's how they represented their previous experience and how they represented what they're currently doing. I've definitely not taken CVs to interview before because I've read things like, they might be doing, I don't know, work on their dad's company's website or something like that, or a family website, and they've over embellished what their activity is, what they're actually doing. And it's you can kind of see a little bit of insight into that person from there. And being also transparent, having spoken to colleges and universities around CV writing in the UK, I think was a slight disconnect in how how to write a CV, I think, is something that most people aren't actually taught properly, and it's kind of checklisted to a point. But then also, some recruiters obviously take CV, strip out a lot of stuff, anonymize it, and change things around. So, especially at that entry level kind of role, you're not looking for experience, you're not looking for job roles, you're not looking for lists they've done previously. It's very much how are they representing themselves. Also, being transparent, what have you actually done? Because when you're leaving university, okay, yeah, you're doing a full-time degree. Have you worked part-time? Have you done side projects? When you did a gap, have you done a work experience year or a work placement? It's what additional have you done to make you different from everybody else, essentially? I mean, how do you talk about it?
So if you decide to bring someone in for an interview, do you tell them about how you're going to conduct the interview? Do you tell them about what the process will be when they come and visit you? Do you help them prepare for the interview, or do you just invite them to come in?
But definitely, for me, entry level, there has to be some pre-interview communications and setting, because this potentially is also one of the first interviews they've had full stop into stepping into a professional workspace. So they're going to have levels of nerves, level of apprehension. They're probably going to have their expectations of the interview are probably going to be based on a very small sample size of their own experience / what they've seen online, read online, or been taught by a careers department. So it's very important that you let them know upfront, like, this is what it's going to be. Don't spring any surprises on them. Like, we do interviews, but then we do immersion days where we actually have people come in and interact with other potential candidates and existing members of staff, so we can actually see that personality play out in type and get that kind of feedback for team fit. We make them aware of that, so they don't just turn up on the day and when they're plunged into a social situation, they can mentally prepare for that, they can prepare themselves for it. So it's about trying to give them as much grounding as possible to put their best representation forward, but then also it helps us by letting us see the more truer picture of them, and not them going away from it with a negative experience of soul. So there's definitely that pre-prep to do. On the actual kind of interview stage itself, again, you can give, in my opinion, you need to give them as much foresight as possible as to what the actual structure is going to be. Talk about kind of like, I mean, for most people, the main question that we kind of ask is why SEO? Because they'll likely be coming from a broad spectrum marketing and business degree. SEO, I think on my 3-year degree was mentioned probably 7 times in 3 years, because they don't really go channel specific. So it's kind of like, why SEO? What have you read about it? What is your definition of SEO? What do you think it is? And actually then trying to understand how much work they've done into this versus this is another marketing job they've applied for kind of thing. And then that speaks to kind of aptitude, and then how they then talk about that. They're kind of, you can get insights into their personality type, if they're analytical, theoretical, that kind of element from there.
You're not necessarily looking for a specific answer. You're just looking at how they go about thinking, and because obviously, what is SEO about? How you describe SEO. There are many different angles that you can take to that, and I guess that would lead you into a path of determining what kind of role is more suitable for them.
Yeah, my biggest flag is if I turn around to somebody and ask them like, "Oh, what do you think? What, in your opinion, what have you read about SEO, and what do you think it is?" You can tell when somebody then starts thinking on the spot, because you can see that kind of mental Wile E. Coyote feet running kind of thing. And that for me is the biggest flag, that you've not invested into actually understanding what this is. But that isn't just the caveat, isn't an issue that happens throughout junior roles. I've seen it happen in more experienced roles. I've interviewed individuals who have done a task and they've come in and they've presented, we built a dummy website, which completely fake, with riddled with issues. We know what they are. And it's like, oh, well, this tool report says this. And then my literal response to that was, well, if you read this from John Mueller 2 years ago, that refutes, so that's an issue. That isn't me trying to be combative. That's me trying to say, right, please just justify your stance, explain why you're presenting this. And the worst thing anyone can then do at junior level is kind of go, ooh, like, it is what it is kind of thing. It's like, well, no, like, you're telling me this is a thing. Explain yourself. You come for an interview for this role in this sort of channel of marketing. You would have at least done a little bit of reading about it beforehand. Tell me where you've read it. Tell me what your vision of it is. I'm not expecting it to be right, because I'm not 100%. I just want to hear what your background has been to this and then what your approach is.
Are there any questions that you used to ask someone maybe 5 years ago, but you've stopped asking now because you believe you've progressed as an interviewer and you can get better answers asking other questions?
I'd probably say it's easier to answer more what have I added. I can't really remember what I've removed, but I think I probably evolved some, particularly more around education kind of levels and things like that. So we've taken people on the training program who've come straight out of college, so no degree, and they're still with us 5-6 years later and are in good positions. We've taken people with actual degrees from various different disciplines. It's more I've definitely refocused on asking more like, what is your, if you had to explain what SEO is to like your parents tomorrow because you've got this job, what would you explain it as? Because it's an ongoing joke in SEO, but every Christmas we all have to try to explain to our parents once again what we actually do for all as a job. And most of our parents just say we work for Google. My dad still says I work for Google 10 years later. So it's kind of wanting to understand what their answers to that. Also, like what they actually found most interesting about their degrees. So going back to the hire we hired, she did graphic design as a degree. On paper, you think, well, it's graphic design, it's artsy. The main question there was, well, what did you actually enjoy about that? And yeah, there's enjoyment in doing the graphics, but one of the enjoyable things back of it was the order and the satisfaction of creating ordering, like file management and things like that. And man, you're instantly kind of going, so you like order and you like being like, you're perfect for SEO. Like numbers in order and making sense of the situations, and that level of also that aptitude of, I know I can give you a client folder and I'm going to come to it every time and it's not going to be like a teenager's bedroom. I'm really happy about this. Like that's a good skill set to have. So yeah, it's kind of trying to delve into what their actual understanding is, but then what their likes and dislikes are, because that is also a flag. If they come back and say, oh, I like the really creative side, it's like, okay, well, you're potentially then thinking more about advertising or digital PR or something like that, and not potentially what we're looking for. So it's good to understand that as early as possible.
Do you reach out to referees if you're thinking of offering someone a job?
I'm going to say, how many minutes before I said this? It's 18 minutes. It depends. I think sometimes you can get a good feel from individuals. I'm also kind of thinking like, being honest, if somebody's 21, 22, coming fresh out of university, and they're wanting a role in SEO, and previously they've worked in a supermarket stacking shelves, how valid will that reference be and appropriate for the kind of oh yeah, they turned up on time. I mean, they did the shifts. They were really good at handling the beans and no cans had dents, that kind of thing. It's like, you can kind of get a feel from someone. I mean, I've hired consultants before without even seeing a CV, just by having conversations with them. In fact, when they asked me if I wanted to see the CV, my actual response was, will it tell me anything that I don't already know from this conversation? And I only found out like 2 and a bit years after hiring they had a degree. So I kind of guess, yeah, sometimes it's useful, but it just depends on the gut feeling you have for someone. And being honest, I feel if you're hiring someone for that level of role and you've got that kind of element of, I kind of feel I need to reach out to a reference here just to see what they were like behaviour-wise in a previous job or something like that, you've already kind of got a doubt in your mind as to that hire. And just from experience, there's a lot of people going through these jobs at the moment. And is that level of doubt because they've represented themselves wrong, or just because of something they said? But there is an element of efficiency and management around this process as well, which is harsh, but it is what it is, unfortunately.
Let's finish off with
the Pareto Pickle.
So Pareto says you can get 80% of your results from 20% of your efforts. What's one SEO activity you would recommend that provides incredible results for modest levels of effort?
I would probably, just because everyone's got access to these tools, so like your Screaming Frogs, your Site Bulbs, your on-crawls, anything that's got crawl capacity, essentially, actually looking at internal linking and crawl paths for Google's internal page rank distribution, and just making sure there's good internal linking and content accessibility across those, because I think good internal linking and good actual mapping, and I know way back when it used to be page rank sculpting and all that jazz, and if you don't know what page rank sculpting is, just look on a blog pre-2010. That used to obviously be a thing, but then because it didn't become the tactic anymore, it got moved away. But I do think sites can still benefit quite heavily from it, and because we've got access to these tools already, it's relatively low lift, it's not additional expense, and updating internal links, doing custom path extractions for partial match keywords and things like that to find it at scale. It's something that can be done relatively easily, quickly, and ongoing, essentially, and we can see better benefits from it.
I've been your host, David Bain. You can find Dan Taylor over at salt.agency. Dan, thanks so much for being on the In Search SEO podcast.
Thank you for having me, David.
And thank you for listening. Check out all the previous episodes and sign up for a free trial of the Similarweb platform over at similarweb.com.